Mentally offering one. Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo. So, pranam to all of you. Thank you so much, Dhira Govinda Prabhu, for the invitation and for the kind, undeserved words, which somehow or other set the bar for me to try to aspire to become what others, by Krishna's inspiration, can see in me. It's even though I don't feel I'm there, that sets up the stage for what's the potential to attain by grace. And we have hope that grace can make miracles. That's why we are here today. So thank you so much, and I'm very honored to somehow be part of this meeting with all of you as well. Thank you so much to all of you for coming. Your presence is very important. And as you may already know by our sign here, we are planning with Dhira Govinda Prabhu to share a few words on the topic of God's unconditional love, the source of healing and wholeness. And these recent days I've been given some lectures in connection to Gaur Purnim, which is coming in a few days. So trying to build up to that particular celebration. And we have been talking, for example, about the nature of love and the nature of God as ever growing in this experience of love. The nature. Yesterday we were touching upon love as always expanding and growing, and how Krishna's Mahaprabhu's experience of love is always expanding and growing as well. And we, in connection to that, to love and God, have that potential also to enter into a world of ever-evolving, ever-expanding experiences of love. We are, in Sanskrit, we are Tatastha Shakti, which means we are potency. And if we are potency, potency has potential. So we are a potency, which means we are potential. We are units of potential. We have a beautiful potential in bhakti, basically. That's what we are celebrating, hopefully, on a daily basis. What's the beautiful potential that each of us have as soul in bhakti? We have been graced with that. But also, that said, as we have a very bright potential, we have a very dark potential also, if we become distracted of our brightest potential. And we humans in particular have a great potential to do the worst things that the whole world has ever witnessed, basically. And many times in the name of God, to add on top of that. So I always say that because, of course, we celebrate our brightest potential, but also we should humble our brightest potential by remaining aware of our darkest potential and the importance of course, not going in that direction, but properly remain aware of what's the best version of ourselves possible. But as part of our darkest potential, I will say we find ourselves today in a very particular situation as a humanity, as the Bhagavad Gita somehow is also predicting in chapter 16, when Krishna is saying that human beings can end up performing cruel deeds, which basically point to the destruction of the world. So during the last, I would say, decades already, we have come to realize, okay, we have become expert enough in devising ways of self-destructing, all of us, absolutely. Potentially. We have these potential dangers of nuclear wars and the literal end of human race and more beyond that. So all this is kind of a glimpse into our darkest potential, how much we can really develop devices to stop our existence in one sense. Of course, we are eternal as souls, but I'm talking in terms of our darkest potential. Of course, at the same time, I personally feel that to counteract this dark wave of potential, there has been during the last years more and more a very evolving wave of potential in consciousness in many people, awakening more and more, like very intuitively feeling probably, unless we evolve, this is the end of us. No? So it's a very interesting times where we find these two currents. On one side, running towards self-destruction, but a very bright light and generation of people awakening more and more to the need of spiritual evolution. So we find in those unique times nowadays, and of course, I like to think that we are all part of that attempt to struggle for love, struggle for the divine, struggle for deeper values, purpose, and meaning. But also even us, Vaishnavas, aspirant Vaishnavas, we are not only struggling for love and the divine, we also have our own struggles on a personal level with other elements, not necessarily elements from the outside. Of course, we have the danger of nuclear war and so on, but also we have our own nuclear wars inside. No? Kurukshetra happened historically outside, but still going on the inside. So we have our own nuclear explosions on a daily basis and our nuclear battles, so to say. And one of those that I personally consider the very all-pervading problem that we as humanity and even as practitioners of bhakti are confronted on a daily basis and need to work on is to properly deal with a sense of worthlessness that many times accompanies the human being in general. Our sense that we are not enough, that we are not whole, that we are intrinsically, ontologically incomplete and devoid of value, and a sense that sometimes pervades our whole being, basically, and that we can very easily and deeply become convinced of, like, I am that, basically. So we may tie our sense of identity with the lack of value, basically, ontologically, as entities who exist. And we can become deeply convinced that we are something that we are not, basically. And that's a huge problem. Sometimes a word that is used to depict this scenario will be shame, for example, toxic shame, more specifically. Because if we embrace toxic shame, basically, there's this subtle difference that sometimes is made between shame and guilt. Like guilt means, okay, you did something wrong, you feel guilty for that, and it's okay, because if not, you can potentially become a serial killer. You did something wrong. I don't feel guilt. I just move on. So guilt is protecting society from you, so to say. But shame and a toxic sense of shame goes beyond feeling guilty. It's not so much I did something bad, but shame is more I am bad. So it implies this ingrained sense of being, like I am ontologically, intrinsically bad. There's not something good in me, or there is not something worthy of being loved in me, and so on and so forth. You can imagine this where that takes us. If we really become convinced in that direction. And to be honest, who is free from that? I won't conduct a public confession here. But in one level or another, generally, to be a conditioned soul means to be affected by a sense of false identity, which implies in turn to be affected by a sense of not seeing ourselves for who we are, and probably not seeing ourselves as never good enough. All of which can really affect everything in our lives, even how we conduct ourselves in spiritual practice. From which place we're engaging in bhakti. So we will examine that in a few moments, of course, but hopefully you start to glimpse why we consider important to talk about this topic here today among ourselves. So this sense of worthlessness, this sense of self-lacking, somehow it also brings to mind the famous statements by Viktor Frankl that hopefully you are familiar with, and if not, I urge you to do so. He will, in his logotherapy, make this important point that he says, okay, every time and age has its collective neurosis, so to say. And we are living in a time where one of the main collective problems is lack of meaning and purpose. We live a life where we don't feel reality in itself has an intrinsic meaning and purpose. And we find ourselves trying to figure out and force and project meaning and purpose onto something that already has meaning and purpose. But many times we become convinced things do not have meaning and purpose, so we have to create something so we can make reality more survivable, so to say. And that ends up in ourselves. I don't have meaning and purpose. I'm nothing. I'm worthless. I'm empty. And in that way, we conclude in that very dangerous direction, because when we conclude things do not have meaning and purpose, it's so easy to give up. It's so easy to feel, why to continue living even? And by contrast, when you find meaning and purpose, even if you are going through the toughest of times in your life, you can go through that and you can learn and extract some jewels of wisdom from the most difficult moments, if there is a chance of extracting meaning and purpose. So again, we, according to our tradition, Bhakti tradition, we are units of meaning and purpose. We are made of that. We are made of meaning. We are made of purpose. We are made of worth, if you will. But again, sometimes we become distracted from that fact, and that may constitute the greatest source of suffering and problems, to become distracted of who we are and all that we can be in potential. So I think it's very important on a daily basis, even as practitioners that can become distracted, to remind ourselves as part of our sadhana. Sadhana also means to remain vigilant and remind ourselves of things that we were told from day one, but still it's information and it's not fully integrated and transformation. So to remind ourselves on a daily basis about who we actually are and who we are not, to reclaim our identity on a daily basis, to reclaim our sense of dignity for who we are, not to become proud of. It's not like, I'm this and I'm unique and I'm so special, but I'm not my own creation. So all that we are talking is not to increase our arrogance, but just to become more humbled by who we are, by Krishna's desire, so to say. It's not so much our own making. So on a daily basis, I think it's very crucial that we remind all the things to ourselves by asking the simple question, who am I? And I know that all of us heard that question, asked that question to ourselves, maybe to others. Who are you? Who are you? Who am I? And I'm sure all of us have like immediate one-liners to reply to those questions, right? I know the reply to that question. I know that, and I'm not saying you don't, but there are so many ways to reply to that question, and so many levels to say the same reply to that question, and to go deeper and deeper. So today I like to focus how to reply to this important question from the one particular angle, in connection to the title of our presentation of God's unconditional love. And it's about defining ourselves, learning to define ourselves on the basis of how we are being looked upon by Krishna. Who we are, how to reply who we are according to who we are in the eyes of God. Because generally that's not the case. Many times, let's give a few options. Many times, many of us, when trying to reply to this question, who am I, will go to the what I do. So who am I equals what's my whatever job, activity, vocation, swabhav, acquired nature, whatever. What I do. But sometimes it say we are not human doings, we are human beings. So be careful of over-identifying with what you do, as if that fully defines who you are. So yeah, we are not what we do. We do some things. It's okay. We identify on some level. If you're a psychologist, you have to identify as a psychologist to be able to engage as a psychologist. But it's good to also remind yourself that there's way much more to you than that. So in one sense, we are not what we do, but sometimes we may reply to this question by what we have. Now, who you are, I am what belongs to me. I am my possessions. I develop my sense of I according to my sense of my and mine. In Sanskrit, it's called hammameti. My sense of I is derived from my sense of my and mine. What I think is mine defines who I am. Of course, the problem is nothing is mine. So then where goes your sense of I? No, that's a delicate situation. That's what's so difficult for most of us to let go of this sense of material possessiveness, because that's defining our identity, and nobody wants to remain bereft of identity. So at least let me be what I think I have. At least it gives me a sense of identity. At least it doesn't throw me into total neurosis. But the point is, we are not what we have, because we don't possess anything. Again, the real question is not so much what belongs to me, but who do I belong to? That's a real belonging question. Not so much what can belong to me. And by the more I have, the more I am. I cannot expand my sense of I by having more cars and more money in the bank. So again, we cannot reply to the question, who am I, according to what I do, nor according to what I have, not according to another way. Sometimes we define our sense of I as what others think of me. Like social public opinion, I allow them to define my whole being. And nowadays that takes the shape of how many likes you receive on social media per day. So that will define your identity for the day. No? If you publish something, nobody makes a single comment, not a single like, you are bordering suicide that day. Because you don't have any feedback for your identity. You're become bereft of identity. Nobody's noticing your existence. And what to speak if someone didn't like what you posted and you have some massive social media attack? I mean, that can be apocalypses, right? So sometimes, I mean, we are laughing not to cry, actually, because sometimes that's the case. Sometimes who am I, more and more in these times, depends on what others think of me, and sometimes that takes us to become whatever, people pleaser, or trying to create the whole identity so someone likes me or something like that, which again stems from this idea probably of self-worthlessness and desperate from some love and some attention. But we cannot answer to that question not in this way, in that way either, according to what others think of us. And another way in which sometimes we try to reply to this question, who am I, is according to what I think I am. Which that may sound a little bit more accurate. Many times is the worst possible option. Because many times we don't have a very accurate idea of who we are, and precisely not a very generous idea of who we are. Many times we are our worst judge. Many times you will tell to yourself in your mind things that you will never ever dare to mention to anyone else. But to you, green light, one after another, self-loathing, and long list of that. So my point with all this is we cannot reply to the who am I question according to what we do, to what we have, to what others think of us, nor even to what we think of us. So I will say a good way to begin to answer to this question, who are you? We could say, you are, as I mentioned before, you are who you are in the eyes of God. That's your truest identity. According to how you are being seen by Krishna, by the divine, that's who you are in the most accurate possible way. And who you are in his eyes, you are his beloved. Because God loves you unconditionally. In other words, someone asks you next time, who are you? You can reply, I'm the beloved of God. That's accurate. That's real. We are not lying to you. And that's a good way to begin. To start to define yourself from a foundation of, I'm already loved. I'm already fully accepted. That sets the stage in a way more positive light and prospect. That's starting with, I'm worthless, no value, totally lacking, unloved, rejected, and so on and so forth. So it's very important that the kickstart is accurate. Because if the kickstart is not accurate, whatever follows the kickstart may be equally inaccurate. So that's an important point that today we wanted to emphasize. Because unless we feel loved to begin with, from day zero, so to say, unless we feel loved, it's so easy to feel what? Worthless, useless, hopeless, you name it. Help me. What else?
Unworthy, shameful.
Thank you. Inadequate, weak, confused, stupid, defective. I mean, we can be 3 hours with a long list.
We could go on and
Yeah.
on. The whole festival.
Yeah, a festival of misery, as you will say.
Festival of misery.
I remember that one from Dhira Govinda dasa. A festival of misery. So we are not inviting you there, but we are giving you a glimpse of the potential to go there. And we have already been in that festival quite a few times. No? So it's so easy, no? Unless we feel that we are loved, it's so easy to feel self-hatred and dread and fear and anxiety and loneliness, so on and so forth. No? And many of those things are stemming from this foundational lack of feeling someone is already loving me, which implies I'm lovable. That's the implication of if someone already loves you, you are lovable. If nobody loves you yet, basically means you are not lovable, and then the other option starts to appear more and more with all its conclusions. So today I'd like to go deeper into that, and we would like to go deeper into this principle of unconditional love, because at least personally, in my opinion, I consider it a game-changing orientation to life, a game-changing orientation to spiritual practice altogether. The fact that we are already fully loved, fully accepted by Krishna. I don't think that's something that is emphasized enough in our community, just invoking some self-critique to my own tradition. It's there in our tradition, as we will see. I will share with you a few sections from the scripture just for you to know that we are not creating a new philosophy here today. But sometimes there are some aspects of our teachings that, because of time, because of different influences that Krishna says in the Gita, stop being as emphasized as they should be. And inadvertently, without anyone's bad intention, different types of emphasis start to appear, which are not as healthy, as wholesome, as healing as they should be, so to say. So for me, this is one of the most important preliminary considerations in approaching spiritual life, and one of the ones that will bring more wholeness, because our tradition is not only about holiness, but about wholeness. As we were talking yesterday, I think we were making a play of words. But sometimes, as you know, I'm a sannyasi, and sometimes for whatever reason, sannyasis sometimes are attached to this title, His Holiness, which is not my favorite, to be honest. As much as I can avoid it, I do. And I will think I would like better something like His Wholeness. Although I'm not up to that mark either. But if I have to pick one, I will go to His Holiness Padmanabha Swami. I'm striving for wholeness. My point is, I have nothing against holiness, but sometimes we we are very quick into jumping into holiness, and we skip wholeness, and we end up with none of them. We want transcendence, and in the name of transcendence, but not being human enough, we end up being engaging in spiritual bypassing. And we end up becoming dysfunctional as human beings while talking from lip out very high esoteric topics, but on a daily basis we are not grounded enough as humans. So we need a lot of this grounding, of this wholeness, to the holiness equation. I like to combine the two, like holiness, right? We want both of them properly integrated. So I think this idea that God is fully loving us is very important. And considering we are approaching Gaur Purnima, Mahaprabhu, Krishna in his most generous, merciful appearance, I mean, it's a very, very relatable and connected topic to preface his appearance by talking about the unconditional love of God. So I've been writing about this in my recent book, which was published last year, called Radical Personalism. I appreciated Dhira Govinda dasa's words on that, in terms of we are a personalist tradition, but we have to analyze how personalist we are as personalists. So I've written a little bit on this topic. If you allow me, I'd like to share with you one paragraph from there. Actually, this topic deserves its own separate book, so I'm already thinking about writing that. But here I had a trailer for myself. So after writing that, I was like, yeah, this paragraph needs further expansion, and a book, minimum a book will do justice. Minimum one. So I'll read briefly one paragraph in this connection in relation to the term darshan in Sanskrit, which sometimes is translated as seeing, but actually has a lot to do with how we are being seen. And the point is, we are being seen by the eye of unconditional love of God. In the Gaudiya tradition, another way of conceiving inner nakedness and vulnerability, I'm talking about that here, is through darshan, which literally means to be seen, and more precisely, to be seen by God. This term entails two considerations: how we should present ourselves in front of the sweet absolute, and how he will gaze upon us. Our part to play is to approach the Supreme Lord as naked as we can internally, while not pretending to see him or even attempting to, but seeking to be seen by him in all our frailty and nakedness. God's role, or more precisely, natural reaction, will be to look upon us unconditionally, loving us despite all of our imperfections and flaws through the lens of his tender and redeeming grace. In fact, because of his infinite compassion, our brokenness and weakness seem to be especially attractive to the divine. And darshan implies such sacred exposure. It implies the ultimate vulnerability. We can't have love in our life if we don't allow ourselves to be seen first. And we must be vulnerable to be seen completely. This is what real love is about, and this is what actual darshan is about. It is not so much about seeing God, but about standing naked in front of infinity and allowing ourselves to be gazed upon and loved for what we are in God's eyes. Darshan is about learning to see ourselves according to how we are being looked at from above. So I hope that was clear. In the context of darshan, we're mentioning how, it's not so much, okay, I will look at Krishna, but he's looking at me, and how he's looking at me through unconditional love. So I don't need to hide anything behind him, before him. I mean, he sees me as I am with all my messiness. As I saw a sign recently in one house which said, "God bless this mess." I like that one. I feel identified quickly. It's like, I'm a mess, but by his grace and unconditional love, he's blessing this mess. Because that's the nature of love. I mean, actually, to say unconditional love, it's like redundant. Because if I say conditional love, that's not love. If I say, I love you only if, and I give you this unending list of conditions, you don't feel very loved. If I put in the paper, only if you, and I fill 30 pages of stuff, at the end, I will love you. I don't think you will just stay with the last words. Like, I will love, oh, so nice. The overwhelming list will be overwhelmingly about that. So for love to be love, it has to be unconditional. It cannot be conditional. And for love to be love, it has to be unlimited, ideally, not limited. So actually, when we say love, we're implying unconditional love, unlimited love. And that's the love that God has, Krishna has, or Krishna is. Now, if you want to be even more specific, Krishna doesn't have love. Krishna is made of love. That's an interesting idea. Imagine meeting someone who is made of love, whose very makeup is constituted of unconditional, unlimited love. So if you are made of love, you cannot not love, because that's what you are made of. That's your very constitution. So that's the God we worship, just in case. No, we worship a God who is made of love, who cannot not love, and therefore who loves us unconditionally and unlimitedly. And by extension, and there comes a challenging probably scenarios, we not only are being loved by Krishna, which is great news, hopefully, for all of you, but we should learn to love ourselves in that context. I love what God loves in me, not to love myself in a narcissistic way. Not like I fell in love with me today. I'm so unique. I'm totally in love with me. That's not the proposal. But my point is, God is loving you, and supposedly we want to love God. That's the goal of our tradition, to develop love for God. And to love God means to love the things that God loves. Srila Prabhupada will give the example, if you love me, love my dog. In other words, you love me and you love what I love. So if you want to love Krishna, you have to love what Krishna loves, and Krishna happens to love you. So you have to love yourself because Krishna loves you. You follow my point? I don't want to make a play of words, just like there is a place for loving yourself in a way that is not selfish, arrogant, narcissistic, but humbling and moving. I'm loving what Krishna loves. Of course, now we will see that the scenario is way more challenging because not only Krishna loves you, but Krishna loves everyone else. Therefore, you have to love everyone else because everyone else is loved by Krishna. Here you have to start to have a glimpse of the price to pay for the beauty of being unconditionally loved by Krishna. But this is a very important point to begin, no? That you have to love. I mean, there is this quote from Saint John of the Cross, this Christian mystic, very beautiful. He says, "Love what God sees in you." No, in this connection, it's a very, very beautiful thing. Love what God sees in you. He's seeing something in you which is lovable. I mean, not something. He's seeing you. It's not that he sees something in you which is lovable and some other things in you which are like really crap. No, no. He's seeing you for who you are. Actually, he's loving that. So he will say, love what God sees in you. So God sees in you something worthy of being loved. You have to learn to love that. Which again may sound counterintuitive because we may not be too trained into that art. We are trained into the art sometimes of self-hatred and self-loathing. So suddenly learn to love what you have hated for so long. So quote unquote. So again, it's a game-changing perspective. But again, Krishna is loving me, and I can feel in some cases something may kind of like, it's not possible that Krishna can love me. No, it's not possible. There's nothing loving in me. Krishna, you are mistaken. There's something wrong with you. How can you love some? So again, we are so convinced sometimes of that we may be trying even to convince Krishna that he changes his mind because he's going for bankruptcy, you say, in trying to love us. But Krishna will say, no, I already love you, despite how much convinced that you are not lovable. So that should be move us to tears at one point. We have to enter into that space till we are moved to tears by the fact that we are being loved completely and absolutely. Sometimes this saying is there, like you cannot love someone until you love yourself. I've heard that a few times, but I will reframe that in this context most like you cannot love someone until you love yourself to be loved. You follow? No. Until and unless you realize I am loved, you cannot love anyone else. No. Because how you will dare to love someone if you feel that you are not lovable? If you feel I'm not lovable, I'm completely worthless, I don't think you will enter into that venture of loving someone else. Because you have canceled yourself to begin with by thinking I'm worthless, I'm unlovable. You follow my point? Who can dare to love if you think you are not lovable? And first, therefore, you first need to realize I'm being loved, I'm being lovable, I'm lovable by God's arrangement and grace. Again, it's not my own creation and merit. I'm not going there. And then I can love others and love myself in that context. So today we are trying to propose a real sense of self-esteem, so to say. It's not a bad word. Self-validation without being conformist, no? Because sometimes people may say, But now if you insist too much on God loving you, you may relax yourself. Like, okay, Krishna loves me, so I can just like do nothing because he already loves me unconditionally. So that's great. So taking vacation from life. But if you are sincere, that won't happen. I mean, if you really understand Krishna is loving me fully without me deserving that, it's not that I earn my merit to God's unconditional love, but that's still there. That's so moving, that's so transforming, that the last thing will happen is I will become lazy or evasive or conformist. So for those of you who are waiting, Maharaj, but you are saying all this sounds nice, but where in the scriptures is this being said? Because probably some of you may never met any of those sections, or maybe you did, but somehow if we don't have the eyes to see them, we just skip them because we are convinced that's not happening. So even if you come upon one quotation, it's like enters here, goes there, and continues its journey. So I'll give you one example. There are so many, but I don't want to torture you with scriptural quotations. I did that in my book for those who are masochists and like scriptural quotations torturing. Here we have more evidence, just if one verse is not enough. But let's go to a very well-known one. This is Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, verse 29. And then Krishna saying, Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, Bhoktaram Yaknyatapasam, Sarvalok Maheshwaram, Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, Nyatamam Shantim Rijati. So here he's given in Prabhupada's words the peace formula about acknowledging different things. A few of them, Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, he's the supreme controller, and Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. That's today's one-liner, which basically means Sarvabhutanam, all living entities, not only human beings, not only the devotees, all entities, Suhridam. So Suhridam means a very deep, well-wishing, loving friend. Not only a casual friend who calls you once a year to say happy birthday, which is okay. No, I'm not condemning that. But there are different degrees of friendship. And a friendship when someone is really concerned with your own heart and with your best interest and is willing to do everything and anything for that. In Sanskrit, that's called suhrit. Hrit has to do with hridai, with heart. So one who is very much in your own heart, who is willing to enter your heart, it's your very heart. Krishna is saying, I'm that type of friend for every single living entity. It's another way of saying, I love all of you unconditionally. I'm your best possible friend for each of you, even before you become a Vaishnava, so to say. And I'm clarifying this because sometimes I've heard devotees, Krishna loves his devotees, of course, but that doesn't exclude him loving everyone else. Sometimes by emphasizing how much Krishna loves his devotees, we may inadvertently fall into, he doesn't love anyone else apart from his devotees. No, he loves everyone, and he reciprocates with his devotees accordingly. But those who do not even acknowledge Krishna's existence, he loves them. But there's no reciprocation because the other person is not even believing that Krishna exists. But there is a form of love. When Krishna says in the Gita, Jayatamam prabhadanti tam stataiva vajamyaham, I'm reciprocate according to how they approach me. There he's talking about his devotees, those who approach him. But those who do not approach him doesn't mean that he does not love them. Just he loves them as much as he can in a non-reciprocal relationship yet. The example that sometimes is given is the example of the mother. The mother has a baby, and the baby has 2 months. So there's not that much reciprocation yet. The baby is not even aware that he has his own separate existence. In the first months, there is some kind of sayuja or merging between baby and mother. There's no separate sense of existence for the baby. You follow? After first year and a little bit, the baby starts to realize I'm an individual entity on some level. But first, there's no reciprocation. The mother is giving, the mother is loving. The baby is not even aware that there is something called mother yet. But it doesn't mean that the mother is not loving the baby. Follow the analogy. The mother is like God, the baby is like us. We are like the baby denying God's existence, not even aware, but doesn't mean that the mother is not loving. Now when the baby grows and realizes, oh, there is something called me, there is something called mom, and this lady has been serving me like if I were God for years without me doing anything in return. So I think it's time to reciprocate. And I choose to do that. So when the baby acknowledges that and starts to be reciprocal, the original unconditional love of the mother now takes a corresponding shape to reciprocate with the child's reciprocation. You follow? The love was already there from day one when there was no reciprocation. And when there was reciprocation, it took a new shape. So this is the same with God. Loving everyone, even those who do not reciprocate. And then that unconditional love takes a certain shape when we choose to reciprocate. But it's not that he was not loving us before. Just an example to help to illustrate this idea. So basically, this is the God we worship. Krishna is a God of unconditional love and mercy. I'm saying this because sometimes we may develop very strange ideas about God. And our ideas about God do not equal God. Yeah? I repeat it for better impact. Our ideas about God do not equal God. I can have a whole list of bizarre ideas about who Krishna, I think Krishna is. That doesn't mean Krishna is forced to be that. Right? So if I like to think Krishna is an angry daddy that I have to be appeasing at every moment because of some unresolved childhood trauma, that's my idea. It's not that Krishna now has actually become that. So we have to be careful because we can conduct ourselves in practice thinking that's Krishna, and our whole practice will be affected by that. So we choose to worship a God that is judging us, that is embarrassed by us, or we choose to worship a God who notices us and who loves us and who accepts us unconditionally. That's our choice. Krishna already chose how to approach us, by unconditional love. So for me to have this in mind represents really a game changer approach, because if Krishna already loves us, I'm engaging in practice not to earn God's love, because that's already given. You follow? I'm not engaging in my chanting, in my sadhana, so Krishna loves me. Krishna already loves you. So I'm engaging because Krishna loves me. I'm not practicing so Krishna loves me. I'm practicing because Krishna loves me. And I'm practicing so I can love him back. I'm giving back the embrace, so to say. He already threw his embrace. If we are practicing, it's because he threw his embrace. So the goal of our life is not love from God. The goal of our life is love for God. It's just one letter extra there. Not love from God, that's given from day one, but it's love for God. So we can return the embrace, acknowledging his unconditional love. So I think this is so crucial because it will inform why we engage in practice, why we engage in bhakti. Not out of fear, not out of duty even, because Krishna must be loved, not out of social pressure, but out of gratitude and a moved heart that Krishna loves me so beautifully, infinitely, and now I feel drawn to celebrate that and to do something in return. I cannot just remain like this. Thank you, Krishna, for loving me infinitely unconditionally. It's too moving to keep still, so to say, right? So that's on one side, and I would like to mention two things to conclude. I have a few minutes and we are closing here, because this is beautiful, hopefully so, but it has a few challenges. It has a few prices to pay, as I gave a hint before. One hint is God loves you unconditionally, eternally, infinitely, but he loves everyone else as well. And therefore, you should relate to every other person having that in mind. I'm relating to someone who is infinitely loved by Krishna, especially those who create short circuit. They are also loved by Krishna. So that can be challenging, because it's nice. Oh, Krishna loved me, but not these guys. I mean, they do not deserve to be loved. And the whole point is, this is not about deserving. This whole thing is not about deserving or not. This unconditional love, as I like to say, is too much to be deserved. Unconditional love is too much to be deserved. Don't try to deserve it. And that's the second challenge. It's very difficult for us to coexist with something that we will never deserve. For the ego, that's a very bitter pill to swallow. For us, if we cannot earn something, it's not so interesting. If I cannot claim that I earned that, it's not like interesting. My point is, you will never earn God's love. Again, that's too much to be earned, too much to be deserved. So to coexist with this unconditional love forever requires such a deep humility. Because generally the ego wants to deserve something. If it's not deservable, I'm not interested. So we are back into the realm of cause and effect. So we can claim we deserve something. I deserve my headache. I'm deserving this pain. I'm deserving it. You can claim it. But we'll always end up as losers in that case. So just mentioning these two things to be realistic and not to just present to you something out of the picture. Yes, that we are loved by Krishna is the most beautiful thing, but also it can be the most challenging thing. Because as I mentioned, you have to extend that to everyone else. You have to understand that it's something that no matter what you do, you cannot deserve it, but you need it, and it's coming. So, as I mentioned, in one sense, I cannot earn it. That's difficult to swallow, but it's not impossible. That's also a point that I always like to make. If something seems difficult, don't get discouraged. I mean, difficult is not synonymous with impossible. As I like to say, the opposite of easy is not difficult. The opposite of easy is impossible. And difficult is the middle point. Because sometimes we say the opposite of easy is difficult. And we equate difficult with impossible. So whatever is difficult, no. We translate it as impossible, and we just look for the easy one. And whatever it's easy is frustrating, it's boring. Something is easy, it's like, I already know how to do that. It's boring. So we need something difficult. Difficult is the middle point between easy and impossible. So to coexist with unconditional love, to understand I will never deserve this, yes, it's difficult, but it's not impossible. To extend that unconditional love to others, it's difficult. I'm never using the word easy here. I try not to cheat you. It's not easy, but it's not impossible either. It's difficult. Difficult is the middle path, the middle level. So one sense we can never earn unconditional love, but at the same time, we will never lose it. So that's an important point. You will never lose Krishna's unconditional love. And yes, we have to extend that to others, but that's already been extended to us fully by Krishna's grace, by Mahaprabhu's grace. So anyhow, a few words that I want to share today with you in warming up for Gaur Purnim. Also, again, we are preparing our hearts for the Golden Lord, the Lord of Mercy, Mahavadanya Avatar, the most generous form of God, the most unconditionally loving form of God, which a gift that comes to us by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Dev, Srila Prabhupada, whole parampara. So thank you so much for allowing me to say a few words, and your attention and your presence and your unconditional acceptance, hopefully to be able to reciprocate in kind. Hare Krishna.
Great.
So, how do you feel? What should we do now?
Thank you, Padmanabha Swami. I'm personally moved. I got so many impacts and realizations from your talk. Yeah. Hare Krishna. All right. So Hare Krishna. Maharaj asked me how I feel. So because we have a few options. One, we can enthusiastically continue. At the same time, there's the possibility that in order to enthusiastically continue, maybe we as a group will benefit from a short break and then come back. At the same time, I don't want to do a break if it's not needed, if we're worried. I just want to put out that possibility. So I'm not hearing a big clamor for a break. Hare Krishna. Okay. Thank you, Padmanabha Swami. That was wonderful. Simply wonderful, as Prabhupada would say. Om Anganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine, Namaste, Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Hare Krishna. Yeah, so many excellent points there. Thank you, Maharaj. Yeah, sometimes we'll hear just like, well, why should I chant japa? Why should I get up early for Mangalarti? Why should I read Srimad Bhagavatam? Krishna loves me anyway. And as you nicely emphasized, that's not the point. Yes, God's love is unconditional. And God loves it. We can do the most hellish things. And God, yes, that's not the question. The question is, what am I doing to show that I have some drop of sincerity to reciprocate with God's love? What am I doing or not doing? All right, yeah. So you started with ontology. I'd like to unpack that a bit more. So Padmanabha Swami wrote and published a book, Radical Personalism. And I already, in your introduction, I appreciate you're sincere about that. I appreciate that. So this word radical, so we can think of radical as like something wildly unconventional. I'm thinking of radical in terms of root. The root of radical is root. Okay. Means like, what's the very ground? What's the very support? What's the very substratum of existence itself? Okay. That's what we're getting at. So there's different approaches to that, getting to ontology. There's one approach. Actually, some of you have heard me share some of my history. I mentioned the State College Prasadam started in 1980, but even before that, in the 1970s, I was involved in the human potential movement. 1970s, yes, good. All right. So some of you are remembering the 1970s. Okay. So yeah, so from my late teens, involved in human potential. So, and I'm still involved with transformational seminars and coach training and personal growth and all of that. And some of you had heard me share this aspect of my history. So I've seen a lot of seminars and approaches and programs and workshops, and it reduces it's simplified a bit, but basically two basic approaches to transformation. One is what we call the blank slate approach, meaning that at the core, we are nothing. And on the foundation of that nothing, we can invent any possibility that we choose. So that's not Bhagavad Gita. It's not where we come from in the Sophotope programs. And this is true. I've been in rooms with hundreds of people jumping up and down and celebrating, we are nothing, we are nothing. I've seen it happen. And so we come from what we might call the diamond approach. A little over a year ago, I read a wonderful book by Saint Teresa of Avila called The Interior Castle. Get into mystic spirituality. That's like every sentence. I felt like I'm reading the Six Goswamis, literally. So, and basically the whole book is a metaphor of the soul being a diamond with like 7 facets. It's very subtle and intricate. And at the innermost chamber, there's the soul's relationship with source, with God, like that. So the diamond approach means transformation is not intrinsically a matter of invention. Transformation, it's about cleansing the diamond. Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhav Mahadavagni Nirvapanam, cleansing the diamond. And it's just like a diamond is always effulgent, a diamond's always strong, a diamond's always brilliant, and the diamond can be covered by dust, by dirt, by thick mud. So to different degrees, we've allowed the diamond that we are to be covered. So there's many on the planet. We might even say in increasing numbers. Most, not all, most of what goes in the name of modern empirical material science. There's versions of at the core of everything, the substratum of everything is nothing. And okay, and then there's some like, well, at the core of everything, it's not nothing, but it's like matter. It's matter. And there's different philosophies in the name of the Vedas that go in that direction. It's not the Vedic conclusion, but then there's matter and there's subatomic particles, and that's really at the core, like that. Okay. And then, okay, but then if we get a little more subtle, it's like, oh, okay, all right. So it just like the computer analogy, Bhagavad Gita describes 8 elements: Bhumira po nalo vayu kamana buddha evacha ahankaramiti bina prakritirastata. 5 gross elements, matter. Then there's 3 subtle elements, 3 mind, intelligence, and what's called a hankara, or false ego. And so it's just like a computer. So there's the hardware and there's the software. So I'm realizing I'm not the hardware. I'm not the software either. But then some, like maybe a little finer, a little more nuanced than, matter's the source of everything. Matter's at the substratum of all existence. So this, it's the subtle matter. This like the French philosopher Descartes. He basically goes through an I'm not this body process, and he comes to I think, therefore I am. So he realized I'm not the finger. I'm not the foot. But he didn't realize I'm not the mind. So he's identifying with subtle matter. That gets to the very core. That gets to the very core. And then we sometimes in our programs we'll do a quick thought process, just following along with what Srila Prabhupada would do so many times. A quick thought exercise. Imagine you're looking at a photo of yourself from when you were 5 years old. Just imagine you're looking at that photo from when you were 5. So now, when you look at that photo, do you say, who is this person? Who is this person? Who's this stranger? No. Oh, that's David when I was 5. That's Rachel. That's Abby when I was 5. Now we know from basic science, there's not one molecule, not one atom in the body now that was there at 5. Still, there's some constant identity I call David. We can say, well, the body grew. And it seems that way, but it's wrong. No, it didn't. The molecules got bigger and bigger. No, all the parts are changed. So there's some constant identity. So they didn't get that constant identity, something completely non-material. So then we can get to a little more subtle, not nothing, not matter, not subtle matter. There's that irreducible quanta of consciousness that animates the body, the owner of the finger. So then we're getting more to it. But then through more logic, like if anyone later wants to do research, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 35, Prabhupada has this brilliant, rather extensive purport, 2.2.35, and he goes into the logic of how, just right now, we did a quick logical exercise, logical experiential, that's science, logic, and experience. I'm not the body, I'm some atomic unit of sentience that inhabits the body. Then Prabhupada takes us, and through logic we can get, but there's something finer. That's the Paramatma, that's the super soul. And then we can go further, and then there's the source of the super soul, and that gets into Karanadakashai Vishnu, and it gets back to Krishna. It gets so that at the very root of existence, this is radicalism. The very root of existence, there's Sri Krishna, the personality of God, transcendental personhood. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oh my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva. I offer you, all-pervading. Vasudev is a name for God, name for Krishna, which means, and this is completely inconceivable to material mind and sense, that Vasudev means an all-pervading person. But all-pervading means that the energy is just amorphous and all-pervading. And so there's this all-pervading transcendental personhood in each atom. Anantarastara, Andantarasta Paramanu Chantarastam. All-pervading person sitting right next to us in the region of the heart. Okay? All right. So now I know, like in a lot of our services, seminar facilitation, coaching, counseling, therapy, personal growth work. Again, it's about like, let's go deep. Let's have a deep conversation. Yeah. And so our point here is not just some abstract, irrelevant philosophy, but rather that if we're talking about deep conversation, to the extent that our conception is that I am this bag of blood, pus, etc., I'll try to keep it not too vulgar. To the extent that our conception is I am nothing, or I am a bag of this stuff, then one thing related to a theme of your talk, if I'm thinking that I'm this bag of chemicals, how much self-esteem can I really have? I mean, bag of, blood, pus, stool. But I love myself. Why? Okay, like how much? Because that's an important point. So, yes. So then, to the extent that I'm thinking I'm something external to the self, that soul, the irreducible quanta of God, then we can have these deep thoughts, deep conversations, but they're really quite superfluous, because they're based on a superficial, superfluous understanding of what the self really is. Okay. So, yeah. So, so then that's why I often say I'm not intrinsically interested in just like a collection of communication tools or skills. I'm excited about a communication-based approach to self-realization, to supporting ourselves and to supporting ourselves, supporting the self to turn towards itself in self-discovery, and to turn towards that transcendental person. That's the source. That's the substratum of all existence. Now, to the extent that we're doing that, not just in some word, to the extent that we're actually doing that in our inner conversation, in our relationship, that's truly deep, not just in a cliche, let's have a deep conversation. To the extent that in our relationships, we're truly moving and inspiring each other there, whether it's with sober challenge, whether it's with humor. Again, following up on a lot of stuff you said, Padmanabha Swami. Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada would emphasize, it's natural to love ourselves. Because Prabhupada would say, oh no, if I'm spiritual, I don't love myself, I'm humble. Right? So it's like, because there's the artificial humility. Then there's Krishnas Kaviraj Goswami, truly feeling I'm lower than a worm in stool. But let's take a look. So my low self-esteem humility it's so spiritual, and it has me depressed and hiding under the covers like that, and just hoping someone will notice how spiritually humble I am, because I feel so low. No, Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami, he's truly feeling he's lower than a worm in stool, and that's moving him, that's inspiring him to reveal the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So that's spiritual humility. Srila Prabhupada, on the Jaladuta in his poetry, Prabhupada's writing, I have no knowledge, I have no devotion. So where does that leave me when I'm thinking, I got some pretty good knowledge and devotion? Prabhupada's truly seeing himself as having no knowledge, no devotion. So we can think, oh, he needs some self-esteem course. But we can see Prabhupada's feeling of no knowledge and no devotion leads him to act in a way that miraculously, here we are in some house in North Florida, chanting Hare Krishna, because Prabhupada has spiritual feelings of humility. We can call it spiritual low self-esteem. So that's the distinction. What's the result? So so this unconditional love. So I like, I mean, can be different definitions of love. I like a definition of love. Love means truly being committed to someone else's self-discovery, someone else's personal growth, someone else's true spiritual process. Again, not just as cliche, and true love often means I'm willing to care enough about you to not care whether you like me, willing to be soft as a rose, hard as a thunderbolt, like that. And so, and so this connection with that person who unconditionally loves us. So Srila Prabhupada would say it's natural to love ourselves. And said, why do we love ourselves? Gets to the ontology. Prabhupada would even say it's natural to love our body. Why do we love our body? Because the soul's inside. Soul leaves, burn the body, bury it, feed it to fish. Okay, but it's natural to love our body because the soul's inside, and we love the soul. And why do we love the soul? Because the soul is beloved by Krishna. Because the soul is part and parcel of Krishna. So Prabhupada's getting to that again, that very foundation, the ground of all existence, and supporting each other to connect to that transcendental personhood, the ground of all existence. That's how we can, without being sentimental, that's like what love looks like in action. That's what love looks like in action. We sometimes quote the Christian philosopher Paul Tillich. Paul Tillich said, the first duty of love is to listen. The first duty of love is to listen. And And so, and then through that, I'm reminded of a letter from Srila Prabhupada to Balavanta Das Prabhu, December 1972. Balavanta. I'll mention he's a graduate of the Software Foundational Advanced Seminars. Just thought to throw that in. There you go. Yeah. And so Prabhupada writes about, because Balavanta, he was sharing Krishna consciousness amongst politicians and very educated type people. And Prabhupada, well, it's a wonderful letter all around, of course. And Prabhupada specifically says, Prabhupada emphasized, he said, if we want to attract intelligent people to this Krishna consciousness movement, we need to be really good listeners. Really good listeners. And he cites Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu listening for days and days, listening to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And he says, Prabhupada says to Balavanta, he says, even though Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was speaking Mayavad nonsense. Lord Chaitanya didn't pretend to agree with him, but he listened. He listened. And as the saying goes, people don't care what you know till they know that you care. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya got like, yeah, I feel understood. You're listening to me. I want to hear your point of view. And then Lord Chaitanya was like, well, since you asked, boom, boom, boom. Okay. But we can imagine in the past time, if Lord Chaitanya started there, there'd be resistance. So listening, not just again as a communication, but listening to support super soul connection, to support connection with that highest guidance within for the listener and the speaker, communication-based approach to self-realization. There's so much about that in Bhagavad Gita, in Bhagavatam. And so, so the title here, and healing and wholeness, same English roots, healing, health, wholeness. So, yeah, so to the extent that we, or those who we're relating with, to the extent that we're not connected with that supreme person sitting right next to us in the region of the heart, then we're lacking healing and wholeness, no matter how we try to dance around it. To the extent that we're alienated from ourselves as spiritual persons and from that foundational spiritual relationship, then we're going to be missing healing and wholeness. And then, to quote Saint Francis said, we're searching for what is searching. So to the extent that I'm alive in that connection, and of course the abhideya, the process to be alive in that connection with transcendental personhood, it's called, the technical term is bhakti. Then and to the extent that now Srila Prabhupada, he'll often say, you become disconnected from God, you become disconnected from Krishna. And then there's one lecture Prabhupada said, no, you're not disconnected, you're connected. You've just forgotten that you're connected. Such a brilliant distinction there. Okay, it's important to say, like, we're never disconnected, but we've forgotten we're connected. And so this gets to like the core of healing and wholeness, apart from, again, using terms as popular terms or cliches. And I so much appreciated, Padmanabha Swami, your emphasis on God's unconditional. That's there. That's there. Now we can look at forms. Okay. So God's unconditional love. All right. And then we can look at, I'm reminded of, there's a seminal literature from the early 70s by a psychiatrist named M. Scott Peck called The Road Less Traveled. And so he was a psychiatrist at the time, and it's a very wonderful book, spiritually based personal transformation. So M. Scott Peck, he starts his book with the short sentence, life is difficult, in case you haven't noticed. Okay. Right. Okay. So yeah, life is difficult. So, and this is completely Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, Mam Upechita Kanteya, Galayama Shashvatam. This is a temporary place full of miseries. Like, we go. Right? And Janma Mityu Jaravya Di Dukadosha Anu Darshanam. The pillar miseries, birth, death, old age, disease. And realizing that is like a beginning of spiritual knowledge, like that. Okay. And then, when I was just before we started, I heard Brianna and Danielle. And Daniel, you were saying something about worshiping the material, something like that. You heard some lecture from Padmanabha Swami. So all these miseries, we're supposed to celebrate this. What's that about? How's that relate to God's unconditional love? Okay, like, because we can look at so many things going on in the world, in my life, in the festival of misery, in my own inner conversation. So I was like, well, it doesn't feel very loving to me. It doesn't feel very. So let's unpack that a bit. There's a text in the Ishopanishad, the invocation, Om Purnam Madaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. So it describes that everything in material creation is complete and perfect. Also spiritual creation, but focusing on material creation. So that's Ishopanishad. So someone can say, well, Ishopanishad hasn't read the news recently. Doesn't look complete and perfect to me. Okay. Yeah, so complete and perfect. I remember I heard a lecture recently, early, maybe 1966 from Prabhupada. And Prabhupada's talking about how Krishna is everything. He talks about Shabdake Purusham Nrisha. Krishna is a sound in ether. So we can think sound like Hare Krishna Mahamantra, or the chirping of the birds. But just as Prabhupada was saying that, like an airplane flew overhead with this heavy, ugly Kali Yuga airplane noise. And Prabhupada, without skipping a beat, that is Krishna. Okay. Well, just the things that are pretty, no, that is Krishna too. Okay. So life is difficult. And then M. Scott Peck goes on to say, once you accept that life is difficult, then it doesn't matter. Just as you quoted Viktor Frankl. Okay. Another wonderful quote from Viktor Frankl: between stimulus and response, there's a moment of choice. Okay. So what's M. Scott Peck mean? What's Krishna mean? And we say, once we accept that life is difficult, because until we accept it, then our life is resisting reality. Resisting reality, always a losing battle. Always a losing battle. Okay. I know I'm going to be happy and peaceful and secure and joyful as soon as she changes. As soon as he stops, as soon as the economy, okay, right? That always works, right? Because, has it ever happened that someone doesn't comply with her every wish? Has that? Maybe some. Okay. So, all right. So he's saying once we accept that life is difficult, and say Bhagavad Gita deconstructs those difficulties into different categories: birth, death, old age, disease, the propensity for illusion, the propensity for mistakes, the propensity for cheating. Right? Okay. Sure. Let's do a quick exercise. If you have never stolen anything, raise your hand. Oh my God. What kind of people am I hanging out with? Okay. Of course, I didn't raise my hand either. No, that was a quick, fun exercise. Okay. And I've done that all around the world. Okay. And no one ever raises their hand. Okay. So we should feel shameful and defective. No, we should this means we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And as humans, we steal and we cheat and we lie and we're subject to illusion and mistakes. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try to curb those propensities and mitigate lesson. But we can say in this lifetime, at least once, maybe more than once, we've stolen stuff. Okay, and we've cheated and we've been subjected to embarrassing mistakes. It's part of the context, just like birth, death, old age, and disease. It's part of the context. So then we can try to, like, once I fix the context, once I get him to be more honest, and once I get once I just get everything together and no more clutter in my desk, and once I get we're never going to get everything together. Okay? Like, there's the imagery trying to rearrange the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. Okay, the ship's going down. But the important thing is that the doily goes under. The ship's going down. So M. Scott Peck's saying, once we accept life's difficult, then we can stop spending energy moaning about it, complaining about it, resisting it, complaining, because that's all based on the illusion that life should be easy. Life should be Disneyland. It's just, right now it's not, but once I just fix things, okay. So he was a psychiatrist. He said, that's the consciousness of neuroses and psychoses. Life should be easy. It just happens to be difficult right now because him and that and my habits and this and that. So once we accept life is difficult, then we can get on with the real business of life, which he presents from a Christian perspective as God consciousness, self-realization, the really important things of life. Then, even the difficulties, we can appreciate them. Well-known verse from Bhagavatam. Tate no kampam susamiksamano bunjana evatma kritam vipakam vidva vaporbir vidida namaste jivitiyo mukti pade sadayava. Then, with that devotional consciousness, even the difficulties, or especially the difficulty, whether it's a difficulty from my own mind, difficulty from another person, difficulty from the disease of the body, difficulty because of the economic downturn or whatever it is, then those difficulties, they simply become an impetus to deepen my enthusiasm, to engage in that process of bhakti, to engage in cultivating loving relationship with that transcendental person that is the all-pervading substratum, the ground of existence. Then even those difficulties become an inspiration to deepen my sincerity for that. And then it's not just like a cliche, then we're truly appreciating the difficulties because they lead me to even deeper bliss, even deeper joy. Again, I heard anything can be misused, and it's become a well-known term, the spiritual bypass. You alluded to that. It is said. M. Scott Peck is another quote from the same book, The Road Less Traveled. He wrote, "The road," he said, the path to sainthood goes through adulthood. What a bummer, because I went to sainthood stuff, and then I get to be I get to be holy and humble and all of that. But the adulthood thing, like responsibly looking at the consequences of my mistakes and responsibly showing up in conversation and like that. Okay. So yes. So this is that not to do it. Not to do a bypass, because like let's say there's some reverse. Let's say something happens that's not according to the way I would write the script. So I can immediately go to, well, I know it's God's plan for me. Okay, well, it could be God's plan. That's a whole nother discussion. But my point here is, am I going to, as God's plan for me, at the expense of doing the adulthood responsible work of being responsible for my response? Between stimulus and response, there's a motion of choice. Am I going to it's God's plan for me at the expense of saying, what lessons do I learn? Looking at how did I set up that painful situation? Where was my self-deception? Where's my naivety? Where's my dark sides coming out, where all I want to do is point a finger is at their dark sides? So at the expense of learning lessons, it's God's. I can go to it. It's God at the same time, in a genuine sense, it's seeing that it's a perfect, as Ishopanov said, this is a perfect and complete arrangement for my self-realization, and that's the matchless gift: self-realization and God consciousness. And that's where we can genuinely appreciate all aspects of the mind, the body, the universal circumstances. We can generally come to, I like that point you made towards your closure, Padmanabha Swami. That's like, oh yeah, Krishna unconditionally loves me. But he unconditionally loves everyone too, including those who are treating me this way and that way, and those who are obviously my enemies, and those who I want them to burn in hell. Of course, I don't say that, but yeah, okay. So then we can really appreciate, yes, that those people who are most irritating and annoying, right? That's not an accident. That's Krishna, maybe through Maya, maybe through whatever energies, reciprocating with me for my realization to not continue the futile struggle of trying to be happy on the deck of the Titanic, and to live my life more and more sincerely and fully for that bliss that will never be crushed by time. So that's something to truly be grateful for. So God's unconditional love through the disturbing elements, and of course, unconditional love. One thing that I've one closing point before going there, because sometimes we think of like unconditional love. So that's exemplified. Many or everyone's familiar with like Vrindavan Leela and the gopis, Lord Chaitanya, Gopi Bhartu Padakamalaya Dasa Das Anudas. He's identifying himself as a servant of the servant of the servant of the master of the gopis. So sometimes we can conceive of like love as a feeling, and that has a place, and there's a whole science of that, and there's Bhav and Prema. And then, okay, if we think of like the residents of Vrindavan, their commitment is to inspire others, including those who've allowed their diamonds to get covered, to inspire them to come to that Vrindavan consciousness. So I know myself, when I think of the Krishna's unconditional love exemplified by Gopi Bhava, that is personified by 1965 A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami walking on to the Jaladuta. That's Gopi Bhava. We can think Gopi Bhava is in the bushes in Vrindavan. Okay, maybe also, I just have little to no realization about that. I do know, because that's the mood of the gopis. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, who was like, he was content beyond what we can conceive there at Radha Damodar temple constructed by Jiva Goswami right there with Rupa Goswami, and he is completely content, and he's living in a village where everyone's Jai Radhe like that, and he leaves that, has 2 heart attacks on the way, and he doesn't need to. He leaves that because he wants spirit souls in human body. He wants spirit souls in New York, in Florida, in Argentina, in Europe. He wants spirit souls all around the world to come to that consciousness of the rasa dance. So that's Krishna's unconditional love in a way that I most practically relate to. And of course, okay, then of course also there's, so that the material energy is Krishna's unconditional love, and then how much we're realizing that, because this tate nukampam susamikshamano, that whole verse. That's why sometimes in our programs we say like that verse defines enlightenment. We use terms like enlightenment, in our programs, to consistently, spontaneously, unwaveringly respond to life's context with deepened enthusiasm for self-realization and practicing God consciousness, Krishna consciousness. That's enlightenment. That defines it. And I say spontaneously, because I could say like, oh, that terrible thing that happened to me 30 years ago and what that guy did to me. Well, I can see there's like a silver lining, and I can see it was actually a blessing in disguise. That's nice. Now, but now when there's no gap of 30 years, then it gets more towards pure devotion. We're like, again, not artificially, but we're training ourselves that spontaneously we respond to life's events, whether it's what I would consider favorable or unfavorable. I respond to life's events in a way where I'm spontaneously deepening my inspiration to engage in devotional service. And that, yeah, the devotional service, again, I like how you say, we're preparing ourselves for the appearance day of Lord Chaitanya 1 week from today. 1 week from today, it's described. Krishna Varnam Trisha Krishnam Sango Pangasta Parshadam Yadgay Sankirtanapriya Yajanti Sume Dasaha. So unconditional love shown, just like there's a picture on the wall there, Lord Chaitanya with his associates engaging in Sankirtan, and that's Lord Chaitanya's like this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. It's condensed, intensified, absolute truth, absolute unconditional love. So actually everything that Prabhupada utters, every verse of Bhagavad Gita, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, they reveal truth, and simultaneously they're non-different from the truth they reveal. That's why whatever we understand or don't understand, exposure to this vibration, such as Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I have this doubt, whatever we understand or don't understand, because the truth pierces through all those material layers, material mind, intellect, false ego, and goes right to the heart. And the vibration is truth and is non-different. It's identical to the truth that it's revealing, and thus it's a transformational experience. And then Prabhupada, I'll sometimes use the analogy of like there's like the boat, we're, conditioned life, we're drowning in the ocean. And there's the boat, and Prabhupada said the Vedas are there, and the pure devotee spiritual masters there, the Parampara acharyas are there, Krishna's there, the holy name's there. And then here's the lifeline to get on that boat of transcendental knowledge, where every step is a dance, every word is a song. And Prabhupada says, and it's your responsibility to grab the lifeline. No one's going to do that for you. Okay, that's because Krishna, this is intrinsic to transcendental personhood. No force, no coercion. Once there's any force, coercion, there's no love. Even Krishna speaks the entire Bhagavad Gita, and right at the closure, he says to Arjuna, Krishna says, consider carefully what I have said, and then do as you wish to do. So Krishna is not saying, I don't care what you do. Krishna is caring about Arjuna with compassion. He wants Arjuna to choose wisely for Arjuna's best interest. And no force, no coercion. Once there's force, coercion, then there's no love. So Prabhupada's saying, no one's going to grab the lifeline for you. But that lifeline's there. That lifeline is that unconditional love. And that's always there. We can continue 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000,000,000 times to like, I'm not grabbing that lifeline. And that unconditional love's still there from Srila Prabhupada, from Sri Krishna. And I mean, the analogy is limited because it's not like grab it or don't grab it. Fortunately, Krishna says, even if you grab it 1%, okay, that's for our eternal benefit. Hare Krishna, thank you for this opportunity to speak based on Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you. I think let's open it up. If anyone would like to share any comments, share realizations, inspirations, or ask any questions at this time. Abhi.
Marge, thank you for just the point about how the basis of unconditional love is we have to recognize that, the basis of our identity is that who am I? I'm the beloved of the Lord. That fundamentally, ontologically, I am of the entity who is loved by Krishna.
Yeah. Always
again, Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. And it just reminded me of a verse from Bhagavatam, Satvaikanishti Manasi Bhagavat Parshavavartini Kamas Chandramasi Vedam Uparadhyava Vaste, where the Srimad Bhagavatam, I think it's Narada Muni, says that Krishna consciousness means to see this cosmic manifestation as Krishna sees it. And so it occurred to me, that means I have to see myself as Krishna sees me. So again, it's definitely there in Shastra. Sometimes when we hear about how high of a goal, pure love of Godhead is, sometimes we can feel ourselves very unworthy, and it's sort of this attitude that even when we're receiving this pure message, we still have our own filters, and that could be our own filters of low self-esteem or our own filters of what other people have told us God is. And so then based on all those experiences, we kind of, mix our own misconceptions and even with what Shastra tells us. So it's, it was nice to get this reminder that, what ultimately as we develop in bhakti, we're meant to actually see the whole cosmic manifestation, including our very selves, as Krishna sees us. So I very much appreciate that.
Dr. Hugo.
I'm really appreciating the condensation of spiritual reality into two powerful axioms. Krishna loves me, life is difficult. Those two really simplify spiritual life. And so I'm appreciating these 2 3-word phrases that are very potent. I was appreciating the point of, if we're loved, that doesn't mean we just sit around and do nothing, that you were raising, Maharaj. And the reflection came to me that when I think of people who have loved me in my life, mentors, friends, my parents, etc., I reflect on that and see I performed my best when someone wasn't expecting anything of me. When someone just loved me for who I am. And there was a sensation of bewilderment. Me? Am I that special? And immediately from that comes an inspiration. Let me do something wonderful then. And so I'm appreciating this point of how we can look at our relationships in this world and really gain lessons from them. Even the bewilderment of feeling affection coming from another person. And so I'm appreciating that opportunity to learn from relationships in this world. And a question that comes to mind is, everything in this world emanates from Krishna. Krishna is the source of all. Krishna can't not love. He is love. So the question that comes to mind, where does the experience of being unlovable come from? How can I feel not loved or have any kind of difficulty with love when the source of everything we experience is love? And certainly there's some kind of ontological, philosophical answer. I think of, the ahankar and the false ego starts acting, there's that. But more on a practical level, what is the lesson that experience of being unlovable, feeling unlovable, what is that teaching me? Why do I experience that? Where is that coming from? If the source of everything is love, unconditional love.
He was more looking towards you.
I'm looking towards you. It's like
Trying
and then you look back to him and you conclude
The whole circle. Well, Hare Krishna, I'm just, considering what I've heard from Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada, he often uses the various forms of the sun analogy. The sun. So there's no shadow in the sun. There's only love. Taking out the metaphor, there's only love. There's only love. And there's only light. There's no darkness. Krishna Surya Sama, Maya Hai Andhakara, Krishna is like the sun. There's only light. And so like that. And again, Yate Chasti Tata Kuru, we have free will. If there weren't free will, then there's no love. So we have free will, and we have that choice to turn our back to the sun. And then we're in darkness, we're in shadow. But even that darkness, it's defined in relation to the sun. Oh, the darkness is where there's no light. A similar analogy, maybe a little more nuanced. So the sun shines brightly. Sun shines brightly everywhere. And I can be under a cloud, and I can say the cloud's covering the sun. But that's not true. That's not true. Just my very limited, tiny vision is covered by the cloud. Just yesterday I was hearing a lecture from Prabhupada. I think it was maybe 67, 68, shortly after Prabhupada had his first plane flight, right? Because he came to the West on a boat. So Prabhupada talks about his first plane flight from New York to San Francisco. He goes, yeah, and everything's so little. I said, yeah, this is like Krishna's view. So he used that a lot. So Prabhupada said, but like, someone, the clouds covering the sun. Yeah, if you just go a few thousand feet up, you see the sun's fine. The sun's shining brightly. We can expand the analogy a bit, that not just the cloud doesn't cover the sun, the cloud covers my tiny vision, but even the clouds created by the sun. So that through evaporation, and I forgot my meteorology, evaporation and precipitation, and so the sun heats up the ocean, and that forms the clouds. So Krishna creates Maya. It's not like the cloud is fighting the sun. Maya is a servant of Krishna. Maya is a servant of Krishna. And in reciprocation with our desires, my dedicated desire to forget the sun, my dedicated desire. Just this morning, I was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, and Prabhupada uses the example of the owl. Actually, Krishnas Kaviraj uses the example. Prabhupada writes in the purport that just like the owl, apparently, like it can't see sunlight, so it only sees dark. That's the way it's made, like that. And so, Prabhupada said, it doesn't mean sunlight doesn't exist. It's just the owl has a. So it gets to radical personhood, because why can't I see the sun? Why can't I see Krishna? Because I'm devoted to, I don't want to see Krishna. My goal in life is to be Krishna. My goal in life is to do the David Wolf God Project. And that would work just fine if you all just cooperated, right? So then Krishna will cover us with the cloud of Maya. And that's, in a sense, he's reciprocating with our desire. Even the cloud is created by Krishna. So that's what I hear from Srila Prabhupada. Thanks for the question, Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments at this time? Daniel.
I've just been thinking about how I've been having difficulty perceiving Krishna as a person.
Yeah.
And when I see pictures of him, it's just nothing I've never seen before. And when I hear stories about him, it sounds totally supernatural.
Yeah.
And then after your talk yesterday, or during your talk, you were saying that Krishna's form correlates to how we love him. And that made me go to the thought of, maybe I'm not loving Krishna correctly enough, or I'm not worthy, I'm an imposter. And I can see that being rooted in shame. So then I was thinking, well, maybe I need to heal that shame in order to see Krishna, perceive Krishna as a person and to love Krishna as a person. But then you were defining Darshan as being seen by Krishna, not seeing Krishna. So, should that really be my focus, not perceiving Krishna as a person, but Krishna perceiving me?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking. I mean, I appreciate your way of concluding about the nature of the problem, so to say. How you mentioned that I'm having difficulty in conceiving or perceiving or experiencing Krishna as a person. And probably that's related with my own difficulty with perceiving myself as a person. Because of shame or other things, that basically shame does not allow us to accept who we actually are as an individual, no? And how that like self-denial of my identity prevents my experience of God's identity, so to say. So that's a good insight that I appreciate. Like for me, that shows the sincerity of your inquiry and trying to see the root cause, so to say, and realizing at the end of the day, taking personal responsibility for. And many times, as you're mentioning, it's connected to how we perceive ourselves or misperceive ourselves, and we project that to the environment. So if we don't have a good, a good vision of who we are, probably that will obscure who everyone else is. No? So, and I also appreciate that you connect that with the idea of, okay, if, instead of just concentrating on trying to see Krishna, probably concentrating on how he's seeing myself, and in that connection, how you see yourself. You know, how we can heal that shame by realizing I've been seen by Krishna with love, with affection, with full acceptance. So I'm worthy of that. I'm lovable. Again, not from a place of arrogance, but from a place of dignity, of acknowledging our constitution. And with that healed perspective on how we are being seen by God and who we are in His eyes and who we are, probably we can gaze back, so to say, at Him with a more healed eye, healed vision, and gain a more accurate sense of who actually Krishna is. So I think that will make for a nice, like, full circle, so to say. But it's good to have clear that when some of these perspectives are like unhealed, that can affect everything else. No, sometimes we can say if you see God wrongly, He's the root of everything, as we were talking yesterday with Hugo, and you can distort everything else by extension. Or sometimes we could say if you have your own idea about yourself completely distorted, that can also distort how you see the divine or everything else by extension. So yeah, I think it's important that we warranty that we are having the healed perspective of who everything is, because since in one sense everything is interconnected with everything else, you have a wrong perception of something, and probably that will distort your ideas about everything else. So those are the thoughts that come to me. But yeah, good luck with that journey. That's a glorious one. So you are not alone in that one as well. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your response, Padmanabha Swami. And Daniel, I'm inspired by the consciousness I perceive in your question. Just like in Bhagavatam, also Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, there's so many verses about the responder to the question. Before responding to the question, just saying like, I'm in ecstasy to hear your question. Munaya saru prishtoham bhavat birloka mangalam. Sutta Goswami says, these are such wonderful questions. This is bliss just to hear such questions, and I get to respond. So so just in your question, Daniel, I'm hearing you have attraction to Krishna, and like you said, Krishna's amazing, colorful, special activities. And then I hear you saying, and like, but how do I accept that? But just in your question, I'm hearing like this is deep personal devotional realizations. So I want to share that. And I remember some of you know my history a bit. In 1984, I was kidnapped, and then I escaped from the kidnappers, and I ended up making my way back to the Middle East, to Israel. But on my way back, I stopped in Detroit, the Fisher Mansion. I was there for about a week, and I remember I met one maybe he'd been in Prabhupada's movement for 3 or 4 years. And there was the Fate Museum. And these are like dolls and exhibits, which Srila Prabhupada, he got that from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Even in the 20s or 30s, Bhaktisiddhanta was using modern technology at the time to these exhibits of Krishna's pastimes. So Prabhupada did that in Detroit. And I was in the Fate Museum. And this one, he was a practicing bhakti, he was a brahmachari. And he was telling me his history. He was telling me his history that he just came, he was invited to the temple and he saw Krishna's pastimes and this very wonderful dioramas. And he said, I knew this is the supreme enjoyer, this is God. And then I gave my life. So I was so inspired and I was so much like, that's not me. I was like, I need 1,000 plates of prasad to chant 1 round of japa, thank you, like that. So prasad was, the Prabhupada said, is a secret weapon. So I just hear deep Krishna consciousness in your question, such sincerity. That's what I'm hearing. And then I'm reminded, and also from your response, Padmanabha Swami, that sometimes Prabhupada will give like a succession. Nama Rupa Lila Guna. No. Nama Rupa Guna Lila. Thank you. Just seeing if you're paying attention. Good. All right. So, yeah, meaning that the Leela, that's the most difficult to access for conditioned souls. And Krishna says, Janma karma chameda vivyam evam yoveti tatvadeham punarjamaneti mameti soja. Krishna says, one who really gets the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities and the appearance activities of my pure devotees, that is synonymous with back to Godhead. Okay? So it's not a simple, it's simple, but it's not easy for the conditioned soul. So that's why the doorway for most of the conditioned souls is nama, the name, and just getting that. Okay, yeah, Chin. Just before we officially started today's program, I was speaking with Padmanabha Swami, and just before we started the program, I was editing an article. A team of us were doing some research article headed by Dr. Gopinath Demerla in Colorado, and there have been for 4 years there have been research on the effects of chanting the names of Krishna on improving heart health, and the statistics verified the Vedic conclusions that this stuff works. It's kind of like a follow-up of my Mahamantra studies from the 1990s. So that's why the stress is the name. And then it's just getting like, yeah, there's something about this vibration that's different than, the song I like to sing on the radio or the newspaper. There's something different about this vibration. And that's why we're encouraged. Like the foundational practice is Shravanam Kirtanam, chanting and hearing. And then gradually the guna and the lila more and more get revealed. And that's why the emphasis is like the encouragement, satatam kirtayanto mam, yatantastra dritavrata namasyantas chamam bhaktya nityukto pasate. The encouragement is kirtan. That's a verse from Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna talks about kirtan, satatam kirtayanto mam. And Krishna says, how much to do kirtan? Krishna says, just 24 hours per day, but only 365 and a quarter days per year. He's not asking much. Okay. Again, all in the context that even if we chant one name of God this whole lifetime, that's wonderful. And if we want to to the extent that we want to really make progress each day out of the ocean of material existence and into the Leela of Krishna, we're encouraged dritavrataha, to make some determined commitment, focusing on hearing and chanting the name. And Prabhupada and the Acharyas, they kind of stress like that's the doorway to deepen realization of the Leela. Hare Krishna. Well, we just quoted a quintessential kirtan verse from Bhagavad Gita. So I'm thinking in the next part of our program, we opened the program with Padmanabha Swami leading us in kirtan. Next part of our program, we can, those who choose to participate, enter into kirtan again. Then after that kirtan, we'll have Krishna Prasadam. This next kirtan, Narayan, would you like to lead? And feel free to sit, stand, according to your inspiration. According to your inspiration. Yeah. Get the body moving.
Yeah.
Good.